So first I have to apologize. If you expect a coherent or even a comprehensive paper, then disappointment is close. What I would like to give here as a lecture is to give you some insights, I have some considerations, some remarks, some interpretations about the British party system, and in particular about the Labour Party, and with a kind of preview at the end how the Labour Party will lose the next elections. But I will start with a question. Klaus is going deeper into detail afterwards. Is Brexit maybe a new conflict line, a new conflict dimension in the British party system? There are some authors who think that might be the case. So let's talk about the Brexit's role in the party system or for the party system. Does Brexit mean a significant alteration of the British party system? And you have some pro-arguments. Of course, you have, Tim mentioned the party often in his lecture. You have the Brexit party, which gained support, in particular at the European elections. And then you can see, if there is a party then which has the name Brexit Party, maybe Brexit has high relevance for the British party system. Or also, I can continue what Tim said, you have a rise of populism, a big rise of populism in both main parties, in the British Labour Party and in the Conservatives, and of course the Brexit Party is a populist party. So, okay. Then you have the strengthening and deepening of inter-party controversies in both main parties, with Remainers on the one side and those who favor to leave the European Union on the other side. And you have the population is divided between two camps. We all know this. But I think we have more counter-arguments which are more important. So my main argument is that the Brexit is just an expansion, or better to say an expression of different political and social developments which culminated in the Brexit process, and is making these developments more visible, but not more than this. So Tim mentioned, and here you can see it, these two dimensions of party competition. And what we see with Brexit is, and I think Brexit is a symbol for it, the strengthening of the cultural dimension, so between authoritarian and libertarian values. Because all these cultural aspects, like nationalism, internal and external security, cultural majority identities, or restrictive fight against crime, these gain in importance, and the left-right on the other side lost a bit of its importance. And the problem in this atmosphere for left-wing populist parties all over Europe now, look to Italy in particular, is that when the cultural dimension is gaining importance, then it's difficult for a party which arguments more in the socio-economic dimension, which is the attitude of left-wing populism, because it goes more in the direction of state interventionism as the main aspect of its populist stance. And for that reason, the Labour Party has lots of problems to find its sympathizers. Look to the Five Stars movement in Italy, it's the same. The more cultural Lega is much more successful, and you can look over Podemos in Spain is losing ground more and more, and Syriza lost the last elections in Greece. So but if you follow my words, you can see that still there is a continuity in the British party system. And still we have one-party government. We don't know what Tim said, maybe not at the next elections, but still we do have one. We have still regional disparities, and this is also a big disadvantage for Labour. It's still weak in the south, and it must gain more support, has to gain more support in the south, but with its populist attitude on many economic questions, it's very doubtful if it's possible to win in the south. And still the minor parties remain strong and are important competitors, although at the last election Conservatives and Labour gained more than 80% of the votes. But this had to do a lot with the weakness of the minor parties than with the power or strength of the major parties. Here you see this, that of course the Labour Party has to win here more seats if the party wants to win a general election, the next general election. But I will tell you more later, with its program, its programmatic approach, and with the low popularity rates of its leader, it would be very difficult to win seats here in these districts. And you see that minor parties, it's problematic for them when they don't have any regional. Still the problem for the Liberal Dems, for the Lib Dems, to gain seats because they don't have any regional strength. For that reason, the SNP in Scotland still is a player and is an important player there. So let's come to one of these opinion polls, and you still see what Tim mentioned, that both main parties win and gain more support in these opinion polls, and an open question at the end: why? I mean, for German eyes, it's very difficult to understand. When both main parties are in such a bad shape and divided, and still the voters do like them better than the minor parties, the smaller parties. Why is this the case? An open question. Maybe we can find some answers during our discussion. Okay, let's come now to the Labour Party, which is the main part of my presentation. What we see in all European countries is that the voters are more situational, more unbounded, and more uncalculable. This is a good sign for an opposition party, because then it has a chance to win a majority if the voters are temporarily bounded. You can reach them with a top candidate, with a popular candidate, and with an appropriate program. But you need both, a popular candidate and an appropriate program for this time. One reason why the Greens in Germany are successful at this moment in time. Partisanship has totally declined as a voting motive. There is a significant decrease in party affiliations and identifications, quantitative as well as qualitative. And this has consequences for the party system, the increase in fragmentation, you're all familiar with this, the pretty high level of competition, and an increasing polarization and segmentation through populism, in particular what Tim mentioned in Britain too. And another aspect which helped the Labour Party in 2017 at the last election, but I doubt that this is helpful for the next election. Many Labour sympathizers, I'm pretty sure, will not agree with me, but these numbers sound at the first glance very good. This is the new membership. You see, there is momentum, but these new members are a problem for gaining a majority, because most of them are Corbynistas. And so they support Corbyn and his program, but if you think that the Conservative members are far from the mainstream of the electorate, then look to the Labour Party members. They are even more far from the mainstream of the electorate, and in particular these new members who came to the party in the last years. But no other party candidate will gain a majority and to get out Corbyn as long as they are there. And you could see it in the last inner-party competition when Corbyn was re-elected in 2017. So, what is Corbyn's programmatic approach and for New Labour? They are pro-EU more or less, but this European Union has to change to a real social Europe, whatever this means. Corbyn often speaks of a neoliberal organization when he's talking about the European Union. And this was also, in my view, and I think you might agree or not, but in my view this was also a problem, or this still is a problem for the Labour Party, that its pro-EU attitude is half-hearted or not really powerful. And this has to do with this attitude that Corbyn always was in his life against more or less the EU, and now he adapted to this position with real resistance, and he is not an enthusiastic EU. So this would be an advantage for the Liberal Democrats, in my view. I don't know why the Liberal Democrats are not offered to get more from this position of Corbyn's programmatic approach. So austerity is the root of all evil, in his view, and for that reason he wants to spend a lot of money for the renationalization, so nationalizing many parts of the infrastructure, as much state as possible. There are people who think it might cost £300 billion, British pound. So, but there is no clear indication how to fund all this. Coates call it a straightforward exercise in populist retail politics. And there's another very good interpretation. I try to find out the wording, where it is. I might find it a bit later, but I will find it. I will give you the quote. Also, you can see the language of Corbyn is that what you mentioned, Tim, of the Conservatives too. It's always the us against them. And we are the good people, we are the good people, and the others are the elite, the evil elite. and the Conservatives are the party of the elites, and we are the real people. Also, if you look to his new proposals the Labour Party is making, you see simplistic solutions for complex problems, which always has the problem to overstretch the public's expectations. Public spending without any clear idea how these proposals would be funded would end in a disillusioned population. Or to say, when you analyze speeches of Corbyn, and always I think he describes an unfair world with words that many people can understand, but his policy are poorly matched, either to the description of the problems or to the ambitions of social transformation. But there is a noticeable rise in the, what Tim also mentioned, a noticeable rise in the ideological competition between the Conservative Party and the Labour Party after ideological convergence between 1994 and 2010. The repolarization started following Cameron's inauguration in 2010 and is accelerated after Corbyn's takeover as Labour leader. But if you polarize as Labour leader on the socio-economic dimension of the party competition, but the majority is more interested in the cultural dimension, then it would be problematic for you to convince the electorate and to win an election. And let's see. Here it is. So you don't have the appropriate program. Sorry for this. Here it is. So you don't have the appropriate program to win the majority at this moment in time. And another thing is, why was Labour relatively successful in the last election? And you say it had to do a bit with Labour, but more with the Conservatives. So it was a very, I think, woeful or wretched Tory campaign and a very dynamic, effective Labour campaign. This was good. Momentum organized it well, in particular in the internet. They were a very good web campaigner. But I doubt that the Conservatives will present another disastrous campaign in the next election. Then there was, of course, a weakness of Theresa May's leadership. She always gives the impression of being cold and distant. Johnson is better in this. Then in 2017, the last election, you had deep divisions within the Conservatives. This is still the same, deep divisions within the Conservatives. But no trust for the Lib Dems because of the coalition government before. But this is not, the Lib Dems improved a bit. Not so much as I thought, but they improved a bit. And now you had, and the outsider status of Jeremy Corbyn in 2017 had a kind of appealing, proved attractive for those who felt left behind and the younger voters. That's true. I mean, if I promise to you, you have to pay a lot of money for tuition fees, and I think you don't have to pay anymore. Of course, that young students say, "Oh, that's good for me. It's helpful." But you know, it's not enough. to gain votes from the younger voters and those who feel left behind, these left-of-center cosmopolitans, you have to, what Flinders is saying, left-of-center cosmopolitans who voted for the Labour Party at the last elections, you need to get votes from other groups than the younger voters and these who felt left behind. But still, I can't see any approach to get these votes to be successful here for the Labour Party. So, still the problem is that Farage's and Johnson's message is appealing to many traditional voters. And I can't see how the Labour Party is trying to convince them. And also I can't see that the Labour Party will be successful in Scotland because, you know, the more left politics is in line with the SNP, but the SNP is the voice of the Scottish autonomy. And for that reason, it's also very it's hard to get votes there, to get more seats in Scotland. But as I told you, the Labour has to regain ground in the south and would not so by being seen as the party mainly for the underprivileged and minorities. Labour needs to win support of the centre, needs to give working class voters a reason to vote for it, not choose one over the other. So this still, I can't see a solution of this strategic dilemma. Still three main problems for Labour. Still low economic competence. The electorate does not trust Labour to manage the economy effectively if you look into the data. Still low popularity and likability scores of the leading candidate Jeremy Corbyn, I show you. You can put a question mark there, Corbyn as a dampener of his party's vote, but let's say question mark. And still low strategic competence, no persuasive or convincing narrative. This combination of left-wing strain populism and old Labour, Flinders called it a hybrid populism, or codes a left populist stance, seems to be not a convincing, coherent approach. Okay, I'll show you here. Look, this is unbelievable for Germans. If someone looks like a very weak chancellor we have, or is someone like Johnson, his media performance is to say you can do much better, but still Corbyn is far behind. He was behind May in June, and he is behind Johnson. So his appeal is not very good for his own party, if you ask the best, who is the best prime minister. Okay, let's come to an end. The Brexit process shows clearly the problems both major parties have, but the causes for their problems can be traced back to the pre-Brexit period and lie much deeper. This is then what Klaus will talk about. Even if the Conservatives are divided and seem not capable of governing, Corbyn's Labour Party cannot derive any great benefit from it. two of many open questions. What are the consequences of repolarization? I think Tim mentioned it earlier too. And why do the minor parties do not take more advantage from the misery of both major parties? Hopefully in the discussion we can find some answers to these questions. Thank you.